the BBP TV show since 2012, where amazing guests share their digital adventures. Who will we meet today? Small biz influencer, up-and-coming trendsetter, accomplished author? You never know who'll be dropping by. And now, here's your host, Elaine Lindsay, the bionic glamourpreneur with Truel Social Media, who's the second most curious person on the planet.
Well, good afternoon. I'm so excited today to bring to you a repeat guest. I am absolutely thrilled. I already got to read the new book. The book is called Intentional. Let me put that so you can see it. Sorry, it's backwards. My guest is David Amerland, and David has been here a number of times with different books and different topics. We've covered the pandemic. We've done a number of things over the years, and I am just so thrilled to have you back.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to actually come back to this.
Oh, it's just wonderful. And, you know, you're an international speaker, you're an author, you're a business journalist. I originally met you through Google+. You do data mining and search and social web and all of those pieces. And then started getting into your books. And BBP TV has been running since 2012, and we've pretty much connected all through that. So it's pretty amazing to me, the progression of your books from really, really technical, search and social, Google+, you know, all of that, through Sniper's Mind, which, as much as it's a phenomenal business book, to me, I think it's really the forerunner to Intentional.
Yes.
Okay, in my mind, in the reading, and I can't wait to get into this, but I found it kind of like the directive for functioning as a good human among other humans on business terms, kind of. Now we have Intentional, which to me, I think this is the manual to be a better human.
I'm so glad you said all this. In many ways, my books have been a progression. I mean, if we're talking about search, in a search environment, right? And we're talking about technical things. And essentially, the technical things are our representation of our intentions and our actions and our values and our direction. And all those things, you know, are wrapped up into what we do. So we fast forward now a few years. We go through the Sniper Mind, which was one of the first books to bring the neuroscientific research of action and intent into the sort of business environment through the person. And then we get to Intentional, which is today. And the question has always been, okay, how do we behave? How do we act in any particular situation? How do we interact with others in any kind of environment? And if we can actually really answer that question every time, then we end up behaving in ways that are very human, they're very value-driven, they're very social, they're very pro-social because they take others into account, not just us. So these books have, although they're very different each time, there is an underlying connective thread. And today, it's exactly what you said. It's how do we become better? How do we learn to be people first? And we have to learn that, unfortunately.
Yes. Okay, you know, for many years, I used to kind of laugh because people always said, you know, new kids don't come with a manual. You have children, they don't come with a manual. Well, guess what? Neither did we. Humans never came with a manual. Well, guess what, folks? You now have the manual. Honest to God. Well, you'll notice I have a million little notes that we'll go through. But I thought it was wonderful because Sniper Mind started with empathy. Now, if you haven't read the book, get the hell out there and buy it. That's my first thing. Second, the whole concept of empathy in terms of snipers turns the world on its head. It really does, because it gave me such a different view of something that most people may have found distasteful.
Definitely, absolutely. And I mean, and I'm so glad you started with that, because essentially, I mean, a lot of the times we don't have empathy in business. and it's critical to in bridging the gap. And you say, well, empathy feels like a kind of very woolly, touchy-feely kind of thing, and business is a very hard-nosed business environment where everything's transactional. And here's what the role of empathy really is. It allows you to step into the shoes of another person, into their skin almost. Understand their motivation. In understanding their motivation, you can almost predict their behavior to some extent. And then you can trust them and you can trust your assessment of them. If we take that into the cold, hard setting of a war zone with a sniper, it is really important for that person to be able to make a critical judgment upon the quality of which hangs the life or death of another person.
Yeah.
Because they're absolutely responsible for every shot they take, they exercise empathy to a high degree in order to be able to say, yes, that shot was justified, or that shot was not, and they don't take it.
Yes.
Let's get to a business environment. We have to exercise the same thing. I mean, and usually we don't, because we think, business is transactional, right? Well, no, it isn't, because in order for a transaction to happen, there has to be trust. In order for trust to actually exist, there has to be a certain connection, and empathy is critical in creating that connection.
Oh, so well said. And this goes like way back to the beginning, because early on in Google Plus, we were building relationships
Yes.
with other people. Everything I've ever done has been relational. I work with people that I want to work with. I don't, I don't believe in. I used to say it was like the pan salesman out of the trunk of his car. He would sell a bunch of pans and then run to another city to not get caught. No, if you really want to work with people, if you want to be close to your customer, you have to build a good relationship. And that's how you and I can sit here like almost 10 years later, still talking
Yes.
and talking about all kinds of things.
Absolutely. And I mean, the people who didn't experience Google Plus the way we did when we were there have
Yeah.
missed out on a huge chunk of the internet working the way the internet's supposed to actually work. The connections changed us all. They taught us different ways of behaving. They forced us to trust in our judgment of people we've never met. They forced us to create relationships over a long time with just avatars, essentially, and at some point with just not even real names.
Yeah.
And then we actually felt the benefit of that, the opening up, the connections, the energizing that comes from sharing ideas and seeing some of them shut down and fresh ideas popping up,
Yeah.
and others just growing and growing and becoming the ideas of the collective. And suddenly you realize that the value that you bring is not the value of keeping things inside your head. That means nothing. It's
No.
putting things out. So yeah, we all experience that, and a connection over the 10 years or so is a case in point.
So let's, before we go through the book, I just want to sort of go through the inner workings of your head a little.
Okay, it's scary, but yes, let's do that.
So let's say 5 or 6 years ago, where was intentional in that head of yours? Or
Well,
was it?
well, in many ways it was there. Okay, because even with search, the secret to succeeding in a digital world is being able to correctly identify and meet the intent of the visitor on your website. And if you can do that, you save a lot of trouble and money for yourself. You satisfy the people who come to your website, and you're an overnight success within inverted commas.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's there, right? But the thing is, back then, 5, 6 years ago, and if we go a little bit further back, 8 years ago, we had tools which gave us behavior, and we used to say, okay, this is the behavior, and from that we can infer a few things. What we didn't have, which we have had over the sort of following 6 years, is the neuroscientific studies and the analysis which is going on of the brain, the functioning brain, when specific actions are undertaken, which has contributed better to our understanding of how we function. So now we can say that, okay, we know that there is no action without intent, no matter what it is. There is no thought without some kind of origin before that. So again, thoughts don't happen on their own. So if we take those two things, which sound very simple and they're very deep in many
Yeah.
ways, and we sort of start analyzing them, then we begin to see that there is a verifiable and analyzable chain of events, which leads from a specific point in time to something else. And if we can understand that connection and follow that chain, then we begin to better understand things like motivation, intent, beliefs, values,
Values.
actions, and behavior. So,
It's so good because well, you could have blown me away because this is not where I thought you were going with the next step. Okay.
yes,
Not at all.
it makes
And,
two of us many ways, right? Because
oh, yeah.
I finished writing in Sniper Mind and I had a ton of research left over. And I thought, okay, I've got this research. How do I make that sort of fit into something which makes sense? And that became the sort of the seed for intentional. And then as I was using that research, obviously I uncovered even more and I went down deeper rabbit holes and spoke to more scientists and uncovered new collections
Yeah.
and connections and my publisher said, okay, listen, but you can't write another 450-page plus book because it's really too big, too dense. So I had to make sure that I condensed everything in
Yeah.
without losing the meaning of it or the essence.
Well, what's really cool, okay, and I'm not going to start at the beginning. I'm going to, of course, start in the middle because that's me.
Okay.
There's diagrams in here that are so incredibly useful when you apply them to your life. It seems like I don't even know how to say it, but okay, well, I'm probably halfway through the book, and I get to the growth anxiety free, this little diagram, and for me, it's like home and office. These small changes make great results, and the top tip that you have is examine your home and your office. Identify what helps you work and live better and what makes it harder for you. It can be small things such as a door that always sticks, a lock that's hard to use, a light that flickers before it comes on. Fix these things to create less friction and make the effort required to get through each day way less. That may seem like a little thing, but I have to tell you, that sat in my head, and I must have gone back to that little piece of the book about 5 times. And I came into my office and I thought, you know what? I really hate the fact that at the side of my office there's a set of hanging curtains on a cupboard that it's just wonky. Okay, the curtain rod has always been wonky. So I had my son come in and fix it.
Mhm.
Might have taken him 10 minutes, and it seemed like such a little thing. But
Yeah.
there's less stress when I come into the office. I'm not constantly sort of going, oh, just being put out by something being off.
Hmm.
It's amazing. It was such a tiny change and it made a huge difference. So thank you for that.
Well, you're most welcome. And I'm glad you brought up this example. And there are countless others from our lives, my life, other people's lives. A lot of people have written in since with a lot of examples of their own. And it comes down to this. We are very good at actually ignoring these things because we think they're trivial. And we tend to focus on things which are more important because our brain is designed that way to give us a bigger picture, to make us more pragmatic, to give us a sense of forward momentum all the time so that we can function and thrive and survive. And the thing is, because we can ignore these things, in order to ignore them, we first have to see them. So what happens to the brain? This is what happens. First of all, we see it, we acknowledge it, and then we apply a filter that ignores it. So we become blind to it. But that filter takes up energy and effort. So we
Yeah.
have a little bit less cognitive bandwidth now to deal with our everyday stuff. This is fine most times, right? You can function perhaps 90% of what we need. But then the pandemic comes along, and that takes a whopping 30% from my head.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we have you know, for 60% to deal with because 10% is applying that filter and 30% is dealing with a pandemic at the back of our minds where we're thinking, are we going to survive it? Is our business going to survive it? How the world is going to change? What uncertainty can I not see coming towards me so I can calculate things which I can't even begin to imagine? So we think all those thoughts. And we can't function, right? Because at 60%, we keep making mistakes, we keep being less productive, we get angry at ourselves. We have to learn to ignore our anger by burying it at the back of our head. So suddenly, all the little things that we used to either ignore or escape from, you used to go into your office, for example, the thing that bothered you, you thought, okay, I'm going to work for 3 hours and then go off for a coffee with my friend. So that's it. You get to recharge. But what if you can't leave your house? What if your office is always there? What if
Yeah.
you're always in your office? And then the 10% at the back of your mind, which is keeping the filter, which allows you to ignore something, becomes really important. And we have countless examples of these things in our lives. And if we just take them off, if we learn to solve them and resolve them so they don't bother us anymore, suddenly we become freer. We become cognitively more powerful.
Absolutely. And a viewer says, "Wow, this is so interesting. I love the analysis of the chain of events that can now help us to better understand actions and behavior." This viewer, Angela, has actually been one that started me on a drive to kind of declutter the house.
Hmm.
So when I got the book and then read about these little things and figured out what was driving me nuts, it's true because that filter does take up space like anything else. When you come back into the office, without realizing it, it's that little niggle is there. It's going to annoy you. And it's funny, years ago, a spiritual mentor of mine talked about, the garbage that we take, and this is it. It
Hmm.
takes up bandwidth in our head. You drive to work every day, you drive the same way, you stop at a stop sign, and one day somebody blows through the stop sign and almost hits you. That little event now goes with you forever.
Yeah,
Every day when you get to that stop sign without realizing it, you're actually taking up space in your head, waiting, hoping, scared that this is going to happen again. And unless we deal with those little things, then it just becomes like some kind of trigger that just keeps going off and going off and going off. And
absolutely.
and
Yeah,
yeah, and it is
great example. Yeah.
absolutely lets you be open to be aware of the little things that can be frustrating.
Exactly. I mean, we need to realize that just living our day-to-day life has an energetic cost, and it is
Yeah,
significant. So if we add little things to that and we think they're negligible, they're not actually, because they accumulate and tend to accumulate and
yeah,
accumulate. And at some point, like barnacles on a boat, they have an effect on our ability to function.
absolutely. Oh my God, that's so true. Okay, so decision making, there's there's just so many little diagrams that give a better explanation. But one thing I'd like you to go deeper: passion, focus, purpose.
Yes. Okay, let's talk about that passion, focus, and purpose. Now we say to ourselves, follow your passion. And we say, do the thing you really love, you're most passionate about. And this is great. I mean, it's great advice because passion comes from emotions, and emotions drive pretty much everything we do. So if we don't feel it, we're not going to do it.
Yeah,
So because we feel it and we follow that passion, you say, okay, I'm going to do it. And then if you have no plan on how to do it, action without planning is meaningless because it's just, you're all over the place. So really you need to actually begin to focus your energy, begin to focus your goals. You say, okay, how am I going to achieve this? And if you start focusing, then you could ask yourself, why am I doing all this? Sure, I'm passionate about it, but it can't just be for me. It's not enough. There has to be something else. And we need that something else because at some point, the fact that we're doing these things is going to exhaust us, it's going to tire us, and we need something to help us keep on going. Now we see that in athletics. We see marathon runners. They love running, they love winning. They think they're athletes. That's their identity. And you start running the marathon. It's 42 kilometers long. Get halfway there, and you're really dead tired. Your legs won't work. Your brain tells you to stop. Your body's screaming, "What are you doing to me?" You need something more than just, "Oh, I like running," or "I like marathon running," or "I want to win." That's not enough. And they always have a vision. They have a vision of achieving against the odds, a vision of becoming something better than they are, a vision of overcoming their limitations. Surfers are about that. They deal with nature and massive waves and tremendous
Oh,
energy. You need more than just the thrill of riding a wave to get you through that. So that's why we need purpose in life. Businesses, what's a business there to do? Well, you can say easily it's there to deliver shareholder value. If it's a publicly traded company, it's there to make money. That's the in order to survive. Perfectly fine, logical explanation. But any business is there to survive and make money. I mean, that's what a business is there for. That's not enough.
yeah.
We need to have that sense of purpose, which allows the business to evolve, allows the business to understand what its customers want and how they're changing, and how then it can change to meet the changing demands of its audience. In order to do all that and to use empathy, to bring empathy back into this, to generate trust so that somebody actually trusts you enough to give you money in order to consume a product or a service. In order for all this to happen, the business has to have a real vision, a real sense of purpose in what it's actually trying to do. And that's what drives it forward. That's what allows it to do more than it thinks it can do in order to achieve what it needs to actually do.
Yeah. Ah, very well said. Absolutely. And I think the book is incredibly timely
Yes.
because thanks to the pandemic, everybody's had a lot more time to
Mm.
be with themselves.
Yes, the pandemic has actually done two things. The first thing is it has made us be a little bit more introspective. So we're asking ourselves, why are we doing something? So we're reevaluating some of our behaviors, some of our goals, some of the targets we had in the past, and also the way that we actually compared ourselves to the world around us, which is one of the guidelines we use in order to learn how to behave. So it's done that. The second thing it's done is it added an entire new layer of stress to our world,
Oh,
which
yes.
has stripped away a lot of the things which we used to invest energy into keeping and maintaining. And one of the classic examples here is our social facade. So you sort of project an image and you think, if I am to be a successful entrepreneur, for instance, I need to be this, I need to behave like this, my profile has to be that, I need to say these things in this way, I need to sort of fabricate or create this kind of imagery around me. It all takes energy, right? The stressor comes along, it absorbs a lot of our energy to deal with, and then suddenly we don't have the energy to maintain what has been false. Because in order to maintain something which is false, this is what we need to do. We need, first of all, in our mind, mentally, to create a mental construct which is a projection of a false alternative reality. Secondly, we need to connect that with our expected perception of the people around us so that we understand what that projected reality actually means to them. So what we're doing has to have value in our minds because it allows other people to see us as something, whatever that something is, right? Obviously not what we really are, but what we're
Yep.
projecting. And then on top of this, we have to put in extra energy and effort into remembering all the little sort of points of being that this false existence has, because it's not real, right? So it's like a fabricated story. We have to learn every single line. And if somebody asks us, okay, what happened in the middle? We think, now we have to go through every line, right? Because we can't remember. But
Yes.
something which is real, something that's happened to you, between 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock in the evening, somebody says, well, what was happening at 9:30? Well, you go, bing, because you were there. There's no
Yes.
effort into
Yes.
recalling it. You see, at 9:30, none of us were drunk, for instance, right? Which makes a very good story, that, right?
Yeah.
So, but that doesn't take any effort because it's real.
Yeah.
Whereas if you fabricate it, and you have to think, okay, what did I say 20 minutes ago? And what does he think? And what would he expect? What is the acceptable thing here? I mean, massive amounts of calculations going on.
Oh my
Well,
God.
you can't do it when a pandemic is happening. So thankfully, we're all having to be more real here. And, in Google Plus, we used to say, be real, because that's the easiest
Yes.
thing to be.
Yeah.
But we used to say it because, in many
We
ways,
were.
we're being forced to be real because that
Yes.
environment made it a priority, but the rest of the world didn't if they weren't there. Well, now
It's
here
so
we are,
true.
right? The
And
old
now
mantra.
everybody's in our world.
Well, yeah, the old mantra is coming back, and you say, be
Yeah.
real, because that's the easiest thing to be, and then
Oh
that's
my
the most
God.
true
Yeah.
thing you can actually be.
And so in all honesty, when I was going through that, I was thinking, okay, so either I'm just incredibly lazy because I just, what you see is what you get, and it always was.
That's the
I,
best way to maintain things. It's
yeah,
sustainable.
I wasn't into juggling. It just didn't make any sense to me. Ah, because, and this is the honest to God's truth. When I was about, I don't know, 12 or 13, a new guy moved into our area, and my friend really liked him. But I had this weird, I don't know, this weird intuition that he wasn't a good person. I didn't like him. There was something about him that was just uncomfortable.
Mm, mm.
So I just said no, I just, oh no, I'm sure I've known some of his friends. I'm sure, I don't think that's good for you. I don't think, and we ended up having a really big fight about this person. And the weird thing is, after school and college, she actually married him
Oh, wow.
and divorced him very quickly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was a shame that our friendship went by the wayside. And I understood that you couldn't make up a fantasy world to explain something to someone. You just had to be real. It
Yeah.
was a horrible lesson at the time, but it made life in the end an awful lot easier for me, because if you just tell things as they are, you're way better off. You tell somebody something else, eventually it's going to get back to that original person, and it won't be in the way you said it.
Absolutely.
So save yourself the trouble.
Yes. I mean, this is a life lesson. I mean, I know it happens
Yeah.
when you're very young, but I mean, first of all, the reaction of somebody who hears something they don't want to hear is always negative, always. Okay, so it's like if I come to you with a great idea, I'll say, "Hey, Elaine, I've got this great business idea, and it's my idea, so I'm really excited, and I'm laying it out." And you say, "But David, this is not going to work." Okay, now I'm really angry at you.
Yeah. It's
you're,
like,
you're crushing my
oh,
dream, right?
yeah. Yeah.
But that's the thing that happens when somebody sees something that other people can't. You're trying to protect them, and you say, the Cassandra syndrome. You say, this
Yeah.
is not right. It shouldn't be this way. And the gut instinct tells us, this is wrong. And the moment you voice it, then you become the pariah. You become the bad person
Yeah.
because you're telling people that something isn't what they think it is. Now they think I have to think about it. And the thing is, we hate thinking about things. It takes up energy. And our brains are
Yeah.
designed to make us work as little as possible for as much return as possible.
Yeah.
So if we have to be really thoughtful about things, have to be really watch our behavior, if you have to sort of be very analytical, if we have to sort of re-examine some of the things which we have accepted in ourselves
Yeah.
or in others, that takes effort and energy. It allows us
Oh,
to sort of
yeah.
create new kind of constructs in our head, and we hate it. We really
Yeah.
do. Unfortunately, the world we're in right now actually demands that from us.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
We're facing complexities we've never faced before. We are facing uncertainties which we can't even begin to calculate.
Yeah.
And the only thing we know for sure is that in the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years, until the end of the century pretty much, we're going to face challenges which no other generation has faced.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we need to be different in order to actually be able to deal with these things.
Yes. Yes. And we are going through such changes, and I don't want to get into politics, but the political climate and things over the last 4 or 5 years caused things to come to light,
Mm,
that as much as the current issues are definitely not what we want, it had to come to light at some point. And I would rather that all people are now being seen, and
yeah.
people are starting to realize, you know what? Okay, it doesn't matter the outside. We all bleed red blood. If you turn us all inside out, you cannot tell us apart.
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
that's the
I
only
think
way.
this is critical. And I think we're talking about politics now, and usually when we talk about business and politics don't mix any more than religion and state should mix,
Yep.
right? But we're in a world right now where these things are beginning to come up against each other and rub against each other.
Yeah.
And instead of ignore them, we actually have to think, okay, why is this happening? And let's talk about the polarization of the
Yes.
political scene in the Western world, which is everywhere, right? We're talking about the
Yeah.
US, the UK, Germany, countries which were seen as being stable in the fullest sense of the word.
Canada
And
too.
yeah, and exactly, yeah, exactly. So people aren't stupid. So why is this
No.
happening? Why are we being like this? And we're being like this because we understand we're being challenged by the reality around us. We have almost next to zero guidance from our leaders because
Yeah.
politicians are still traditional animals and they're still working in the traditional ways and they still are very slow to basically grasp what's happening, and they're always reactive as opposed to proactive. And we can
Yeah.
say that is the nature of politics because if you legislate, you can't proactively legislate, you always
No.
reactively legislate,
Yeah.
right? Which is probably a good thing, but
Yeah.
we yeah, we need them now to kind of begin to understand the change, and they can't. So then it's left to us, and what happens to us? Well, some of us may be able to see it and say, hey, this is what we should be doing, and some of us can't see it. They feel the fear, and then they say, okay, when did I not feel afraid? 10 years ago. So really, the past is the answer to what I'm feeling,
Yeah.
because I don't want to feel afraid. I don't want to feel uncertain. I don't want to feel like my children will have no future. So let's go back to the 50s, 60s, 70s, 30s, whatever in your brain is the
Yeah.
safe space for you.
Yeah.
It's perfectly understandable. It would have happened in a similar situation in a tribe living in a cave in the Stone Age if they were
Yeah.
faced the same sort of thing.
Yeah.
We're going to get two groups. One group says, we stay in the cave until, the danger goes away. The other group says, well, the danger isn't going to go away. We need to go out there
So
and fight it and create safety for ourselves.
yeah.
So how do we deal with that is what he said. If we accept that we're all people, if we accept that our superpower is this connection, which brings us
Yeah.
together. If
Yes.
we accept that we basically need dissenting views because they bring in a different version of reality, which allows us to operate
Absolutely.
better. If we accept that, there's nothing we can't do.
That's
And I
true.
really believe that. So it's getting past our own, because you're going to ask what's stopping us,
Hubris.
right?
Yeah.
What's stopping us is our knee-jerk emotional response, and we all feel that. If you're progressive
Absolutely.
and somebody says, let's go back to the 50s, your blood boils.
Yeah.
If you're conservative with a small c, and
Yeah.
somebody says, okay, what we need is do away with governments and have a
Everything.
world government to run the planet better. Well, their blood boils, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like just stripping them away from their protection, which is their identity.
Yeah.
So, or rather, their identity, which is their protection. So, really, we need to say, okay, listen, we need to do something. We can't just do nothing. And if we need to do something, can we do it together? Can we find the middle ground? And
Yes.
that middle ground is where we thrive.
It truly is. It's hard though because there's so much fear.
Yes.
Because yeah, people are used to doing things a certain way, whatever that may be. People are used to seeing things in certain light, and we don't want to change, and we're all guilty of that. I have a friend who gave me a huge talking to about feminism and women's rights because I was kind of passive. And until, I heard it from someone that made a great deal of sense so that I could look in and research what I was being told and really see the truth of everything. I guess there was a fear there that I was gonna, upset my apple cart the way things I like things.
Yes. We,
So
we all feel
it's
that.
yeah, we all have the fears.
Mm,
I think at some point, everybody comes to that cliff that they can't avoid,
mm.
and you just got to jump.
Yes, yeah, it's a difficult thing. I mean, it's huge. I mean, your analogy is perfect. We come before a cliff, and you say, "Okay, I have to jump, and I don't know if I'm going to survive that jump."
Yeah,
Okay, it's a huge leap of faith, literally.
yeah,
If you make it alone, you're very brave, very strong internally, very strong mentally person, and very few of us are.
yeah.
This is the truth. So essentially, we need to create, in order to have that resilience, we need to create a community. And when the moment we say community, everybody thinks, we should all be the same. because then immediately we trust each other, we recognize each other. We should all be white, we should all be color, we should all be black, whatever it is, right? We should
Yeah.
all be Anglo-Saxon Protestant. But that's not how communities thrive, right? That's not how
No,
communities work, and they
it's
never have done
boring.
historically. Well, historically, you're narrowing yourself down, you're narrowing your options. And this is the worst possible thing you can do when the
Yeah.
world is so uncertain that the challenges we face are constantly evolving, constantly mutating, constantly being amplified by other things. And we are sort of locked into one particular point of view. So this is not going to work, right?
Yeah.
This is the ostrich approach. We all agree that, if we bury our heads in the sand, there's no threat. And we all agree to that. So I
Yeah.
think this is great.
Because we can't see it.
Exactly. So basically, we need that community which has the resilience and the strength of a community that is constantly challenging itself internally in small ways that then allow
Yeah.
it to become stronger when they all come together against an external threat. And historically, the communities which have thrived, the countries which have thrived, the societies which have thrived, have had input from, all sexes, all colors, all religions, all
All
cultures,
ages.
in all ages, exactly, all that going in. And I'm glad you brought age into this now, because traditionally, again, we used to believe that people who were older possessed knowledge and skills and experience, which
Yeah.
we could tap into, because, when you're young, you don't have it, right? But you
Yeah.
have the strength and the impetus to do things, and you want to rush into something. You got to say, okay, wait a minute. What do we know historically in the past? And we lost that, right? We had like 20,
Totally.
30 years, and towards the end of the close of the 20th century, when we thought that youth is what we need, and everything had to be youthful, and we ignored the past,
Yeah.
and we swept everything under the carpet that happened in terms of things we didn't like historically. And we thought, this is great. We're going to go into a new century with a blank slate. Well, how? How is that going to happen?
Doesn't work that
Well,
way.
exactly. It was wishful thinking. I mean, magical thinking, maybe
Yeah.
with great intentions to do something different, but evidently it didn't happen this way. It has disappointed all of us, and evidently we need to do things differently now.
And doing things differently doesn't mean erasing everything. Because if you lose sight of the mistakes, you're doomed to repeat them.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you said this, because that's exactly right. I mean, what is it that allows us to learn? Well, this is how the brain learns. This is how the brain learns when we learn something new. And then this is how we learn when it comes to patterns. Now, when we learn something new, the brain uses strategies to predict something. And let's use a dance, right? We use a
Yeah.
dance that has X number of steps. Somebody shows us the steps, and we begin to follow them. We follow the first, second, third. By the time we get the fourth, we make a mistake. So we start again from the first one, right? What happens now? The brain remembers the fourth, which you made as a mistake. It remembers it, and then it erases it, so it's not in its projection anymore. So either you're going to get the fourth step right this time, or you're going to make a new mistake but not repeat
Yeah.
the old one.
Yeah.
Okay. So how did the brain do that? It remembered what you actually got wrong. You put in a database of remembered things and erased it. Now let's go into, and that's how we learn new things, right? That's how we evolve
Yeah.
constantly. So we can't ignore our mistakes in order to evolve. We need to actually recognize them. So we go and make new mistakes, or find or get things right.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to patterns of behavior, however, this is where we need to actually remember the patterns that actually worked for us. And this is something which I mentioned in Sniper Mind, where snipers constantly go over the things which worked for them and what
Yes.
didn't work, and they sort of rework in their heads all the time, because they create the connections, they create the analytical structure that makes it energetically easier to remember and allows them to
Quicker.
progress to the next thing. So if you say, there's a pattern of behavior, or it's a business plan, it's a life plan, it's a situation, before and know how to deal with it, bingo, you're brilliant. If you haven't met that before and you don't know how to deal with it, you progress very, very
Much
carefully.
slower.
Exactly. And when you make a mistake, you recognize it and you say, "Oh, sorry about that," because this is new to me. And
Yeah.
then you can actually move on and actually and learn from that.
Yeah.
If you don't do that, what happens? You think, okay, I failed and this is bad. I don't want to remember that failure. I'll remember my successes, and next time you're met with a similar situation, you're going to fail again because you've
Yeah.
forgotten the pattern that you're supposed to do. And
Exactly the same way, too.
yes, exactly. Well, some people are locked into that. I've got examples of people who have married, divorced, remarried, and their new wife
The
is very
same
much
type
like
of
the old.
person.
Yes, yes,
Yes.
exactly. And they're locked in the
Yes.
same relationship they fled from. I mean,
Yeah.
it's mind blowing. And people, my friends say, well, he has a type. Well, sure, he may have a type, but he also has a way of locking himself to the same partner behavior. So why did you run away from your first marriage? Because your second one is exactly the same. So so
But
these are the things which we have to remember. You know,
the mistakes that
yeah,
we erase like that, we are absolutely doomed to repeat.
exactly. Yeah,
And
we're
yeah, I
gonna learn.
too have friends that have married the same person over and over again, but they all look different, but they all act
Yeah.
exactly the same.
Yes, yes, exactly. And they find themselves in the same sort of pattern of behavior throughout, and they repeat essentially the mistakes they fled from.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot to take in. I
It,
think this manual belongs in schools. Like I really do. Not just because you wrote it, but I really do because it's all the pieces of us that up until now we have not been taught. We have not even looked at. This generation, this current generation, and even the millennials
mm,
are definitely more self aware than my generation because, we were the peace and love and flowers generation. And we were not globally aware in terms of taking care of the planet. We were not aware of other cultures around us even
mm,
a
mm,
lot because we were all kind of in areas where there was not a great deal of diversity.
mm.
But Maya Angelou said, when we know better, we do better. Well,
Yeah.
this generation, they're sort of coming into it. This is a weird analogy, but you know how the monkeys on the island, the one monkey learns how to peel the banana, and then all the monkeys, they already know. It's like this generation is being born with much more self awareness
Mm.
because we're all coming into more self awareness.
Yes,
Does that make sense?
it does absolutely, and I'll quantify this a little bit better. We are the product of our environment. When the environment was simpler, when we could get by through compartmentalizing our lives or compartmentalizing a vision or a culture, and you would be fine, we did it because it was fine. It didn't matter if it was wrong, as in, you can do better. Sure, we can all do better, but it takes effort and energy, and we just have only so much energy to put into every effort, right?
Yeah,
So if there was no absolute need, they could do better is something that you put at the back of your mind and you say, yeah, sure, but I love my life. The world has changed. It's become bigger. It's become more porous. Knowledge is going not just up and down the chain, but also laterally. It goes across generations. It goes across cultures. It goes across contexts in many situations. So the thing which you said at a party where you were with, 5 friends and you felt safe and it was a bit risque, now travels across and comes out in your job interview, for instance. You think,
yeah,
oh, okay, and you're being judged on it, right?
yeah,
And you say, well, he was innocent. We say, well, if he was really innocent, then why did you say it in that context? Why can't you say it
yeah,
in this context?
yeah,
Well, maybe because the subtext of that is not so innocent. You say, okay, if the subtext isn't so innocent, then why say it at all? Because you understand that it's wrong. You say yes, so I'll never do it again. So it's things like that which are
yeah,
changing, and that changes the
yeah,
awareness of our impact on the world, which then changes our behavior towards others and how we understand ourselves behaving in different contexts.
yes.
And then everything gets amplified again.
Oh, absolutely. And because on average, we are traveling more, we're interacting with
Yes.
so many different types of people in different places,
Yes.
and taking in other cultures and their norms, their mores, their food, their everything
Yes.
is it's being passed around the world. And we're seeing that, what, everybody loves a good laugh, a good meal, a good
Yes.
time, good friends. The similarities, if we just highlight them a little more, I know I'm really Pollyanna, and
No, no,
it's
not in the least. What you're saying is very real. We're very human. We lose
yeah,
sight of that. It is very easy to do because
yeah,
if we get locked inside our head, Then what is important to us are the things which, are perceptually important. We need to be able to be successful. We need to be able to be listened to. We don't want to have too many disagreements in our lifetime. We don't want to have too many disagreeable people around us. All these things,
Yeah.
because we just want again to seek the easiest path. And then suddenly the world has changed the way we do. And you say, okay, all these things are happening now. We have arguments. We see people who are aggressive. We see people who are pathetic and they should be in positions of power, and they are, and they're creating all sorts of damage in the world. And, who put them there and what are they gaining when they put them there? We're asking these questions.
Yeah.
These are difficult questions to ask. They're even harder to answer, because then the question on that, the follow-up question is, what are you going to do about it? And we all feel that we should do something about it. So we feel all this, and it's a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, a lot to deal with, a lot of things to relearn to do. And then you say, okay, then how do I sort of feel that I've had a life? How do I feel that I am alive? How do I feel that I have some kind of value, which is not transactional? And it comes always down to things that's a human. It comes to your friends and your connections and your family. And your friends may be halfway around the world, right? And you may have never met them before in the flesh, but they're still friends. So it comes down to those connections which enrich your inner world, which then allows you to, in turn, enrich the world around you. And that's a very human thing. Our technology now makes it possible to happen faster and better than ever before, with more people than ever before. We sometimes struggle with that ourselves, because we think, okay, that gives us some kind of power and responsibility. The Spider-Man syndrome, how do we use it? It's for us to work out. So again, it's a lot to take in, but we're all struggling with it. If you acknowledge that I'm human, I can fail, I need others. If you say those three things to yourself, then you find a lot of other people stepping up to say, hey, we feel your pain. We feel also pain ourselves. And yeah, this world is pretty crappy right now, but it has the potential to be so much better. So how can we all sort of contribute a little bit? Because none of us can remake the world or even make the world, but all together we are the world. So we understand that.
Together we are exponential.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, it's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. Yeah. Singularly, we're just a little, but together, absolutely.
It's what
Absolutely.
Caesar said, right? And Caesar the ape, not Caesar the Roman emperor. He said, "Stronger together."
Okay, there we go. There we
Planet
go.
of the Apes. Yes, absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, well, yeah, and sometimes, it's the movies that they make. Sometimes it's little things that cartoons the kids watch that you
Hmm.
get these nuggets of absolute brilliance.
It's narratives, right? Because what is narrative? Essentially, narratives are facts which are woven into some kind of pattern that makes sense. If we have facts, it doesn't matter how good they are, how verifiable, how accurate. If they don't make sense, we can't deal with that. We can't use them. We need to be able for things which we see and touch and put together to make sense in order for us to say, okay, since this makes sense, then I know what to do with it. If it's
Right.
something which does not make sense, it doesn't. I can't use it. It's
Yeah,
crazy, right? So yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. Oh God, that was really well said. Okay, there's one more thing I
Okay.
want to. Okay, let's hit on mindset. And in the book, there's a piece that really talks about the simplest of things, which is breathing, and
Mm,
breathing is key
mm.
to sort of, I guess, working on your mindset, your comfort levels, your handling of your fear. I think it all kind of can come back to your breath. I know I'm being simplistic, but
Not in the least. And let's carry out a small experiment, right? Say we're all sitting here comfortably, right? And if your audience is listening, you say, okay, this is what you're going to do. You're going to take 15 short, sharp breaths, and you're going to go like that 15 times, okay?
yeah,
And what happens? The moment you do that, your heart rate goes up, your blood
yeah,
pressure goes up, you begin to feel a little bit anxious, and all you've done now is just change your breathing pattern, right?
yeah,
Your body doesn't know it's an experiment. This
no,
kind of behavior, this kind of breathing, kicks off the sort of panic response in the body. Cortisol levels begin to rise. Your blood pressure goes up. You're getting ready for action because you think there's something to panic about. But what is more interesting is what is happening inside your head, because the brain takes about 20 to 25% of our energy. And what happens in moments when we feel stress and fear, a lot of the higher planes or the higher centers of the brain shut down. They just get isolated. So they don't actually take up a lot of blood flow, a lot of energy, a lot of nutrients. So we are left now with the basic ones, which, it's the fear response, the panic response, the emotional centers, the emotional responses. So whatever reality we see in front of us, whatever facts we're being presented with, we cannot analyze. So we can't understand them. We can't make sense of them. All we feel is a panic. And the moment you think, okay, here's something I've got in front of me, I don't know what it is important, however, and I can't deal with it. Well, that is not designed to make you feel good about yourself.
No.
It's not designed to let you get a handle on things and get a grip on reality.
No.
So then how do we turn that on its head? Obviously, in order to turn back those higher centers of the brain which carry out analytical thought and emotional regulation in higher executive function, we regulate our breathing. So we take a deep breath and we hold it 1, 2, 3, 4, and you exhale. And immediately with just one breath, you feel yourself relaxing.
Oh, yeah.
You feel your blood pressure begin to go down. You feel a load being taken off your head. And all that's happened is that the panic centers in your brain now begin to become secondary as the higher centers kick in. So just with that simple thing, that breathing, we regulate our emotions. If we regulate our emotions, we deal better with the reality which we face. And I know we all like to feel an emotional catharsis from time to time. We like to explode, have a big argument, give somebody a piece of your mind, right? We say
Yeah.
that. It's always the wrong piece to give.
Yes,
But
always.
here's a fact. There is no situation ever where any of us have lost control of our emotions and it's turned out to be for the better.
It's true.
So we always need to be able to regulate ourselves emotionally. For the first time, we have seen, this connection between breathing and how the brain works. This came out of neuroscientific studies carrying out, fMRI sort of imaging, which allows us to see what happens to the brain when the body breathes differently. And also we carried out neurochemical sort of analysis to see what happens to the neurotransmitters in the bloodstream if we start breathing deeply. We know that just on that simple thing, deep breaths, we can regulate our emotions, which then allows us to regulate our thoughts, which then allows us to better control the decision-making process, which then allows us to reach decisions and choices and actions, which will deliver a different outcome to what if we had not done all that.
So true. And my spiritual advisor calls it slow and low.
Yes, I mean, how easy
Slow
to
and
remember
low.
that. Exactly.
Slow
And
and low.
we can all
Yeah.
do with more of that.
Yeah. When you're about to yell at your hubby or one of your kids, or it was always okay, do a couple of slow and low breaths and then you can decide what you're going to do
Yeah,
next.
yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
It does make a huge, huge difference. My God, oh my God. We're almost coming up on an hour here. As
Yeah, yeah.
usual, David, you are just such a wealth of knowledge. You are so
Thank you.
wonderful to talk to. I
Thank you so much.
enjoy conversing with you always.
Thank you.
I
It's
am so,
the feeling is mutual, and we could go on forever here.
we really could.
Yeah.
The book, Intentional, get it in the right place, Intentional, and Sniper Mind, and every other book that David has written. I'm telling you, you cannot go wrong. Yes, I'm a bit of a raving fan, but that's why he's on the show. And that's why I get to call him friend. All the way around the world, we have not met IRL yet,
No,
but we
exactly. Yeah,
will.
we will.
We will.
Exactly. It's only a matter of time, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. On that note, on our page on BBP TV, you'll find all the information of how to go get his books. You'll find more information about David and the links to his website and his social channels as well. I'm Elaine Lindsay. I thank you from the very bottom of my heart, David. It's so
It's been a
wonderful.
it's been a real pleasure. Thank you.
Love having you on the show.
Thank you.
To our audience, I just want to say, make the very best of your today, every day, and I'll see you next time.
Brought to you by BBP TV Show and Truel Social, helping small biz navigate the digital world.